In episode 4, part 4 picks up where part 3 leaves off. Well, good news for Snarf Oswald, he managed to escape. Now here comes the bad news. Now that Mumm-ra has gotten both the Sword of Plunder and the gold chest with the treasures on Thunderers themselves at once, things look bad for the Thundercats. Now, honestly, don't ask me how it happened, but somehow the Sword of Omens came to life and did something about it. So what it did, it was pursuing Mumm-ra that had the gold chest. But he won't be holding it for long because when the sword pierces through the chest, it causes the chest itself to lose all the treasures, well, except for the Book of Omens, which Mumm-ra had got. So now that he's back at the pyramid, oh, speaking of which, back with the Thundercats, since they've been tied up in part 3, they have somehow have gotten free. And then back at the pyramid student chamber, remember the 3 snarks that had been tied up? Well, luckily for the sarcophagus, it exploded, and that's when the 3 stars had managed to escape. Now remember back in part 3, Mumm-ra had used the Snarfer's disguise to trick the Thundercats. Anyway, back with Mumm-ra, now that he's got the Book of Omens and he's back to his mummified form, now all he has to do is get the Thundercats' secrets. If he can read a book, of course. So back with Lionel, who's sitting down now all depressed until Snarf shows up. Remember, he escaped from the pyramid and along with his nephew. Now, Snarf could tell that there was something wrong with him. Now, Lionel started to plead his case to say how the mission was a disaster and etc. No, Snarf said to Lionel, it was my fault. The reason why Snarf said it was his fault because he just pleaded a case to say if himself and his nephew hadn't run off when they did, then none of this would have happened. Then the disaster would have been averted because they now know better than to run off when they did. Yes, it's true, Lionel said. You made a mistake, but I can understand why you did what you did. But then Lionel says that it's his own fault because he's the one who made a mistake and that he made all the wrong decisions. So Lionel also pleaded his case to say maybe I shouldn't be the leader after all anymore. But then Jaga's spirit told him otherwise. He said you can't expect everything to go your way all the time. Things just don't go the way it's planned sometimes, he said. Besides, Jaga's spirit said, the Thundercats need you. It's true, Lionel says, but I made a mistake. I made bad choices, he said. You can't give up on the mission, Jaga Spirit said. Not yet. The best thing for you to do right now is to find the Book of Omens and the long lost treasures of Dundera. Just start what you can do first, he said. So after Jaga told Lionel to gather as much treasure as much as possible, he disappeared. Well, that made Lionel feel better after Jaga disappeared and then told Snarf, by golly, Jaga's right. We got work to do, so let's go. So both Snarf and Lionel head off. Remember the red star that had crashed since 2 episodes ago? Now don't ask me how it happened. I guess the mutants must have fixed it on Hook Mountain. I can't say for sure. So now the red star is on its way to New Thunder, just like what the Feliner did. And let's not forget Scythe and Vultureman. They're there too. So long story short, back with the red star, it had arrived in New Thunder, just like what the Feliner did. And both Scythe and Vultureman are arguing who's controlling what and etc. Well, luckily for the Red Star, it managed to land right into the swamplands of New Thundera, well, otherwise intact. So both Slide and Voltman got out of the Red Star, somehow also intact. So long story short, after Slide had asked Voltman a question what they're gonna do about it, that's when Mama showed up. So after Mama had appeared out of nowhere, the mutants were shocked. So just when he was about to wander off, that's when Voltman suggested to Slife that they should follow him. So they did. So they followed Mama to the Pyramid's tomb chamber. So after they arrived, they saw Mumm-ra. So Mumm-ra went ahead to plead his case to say, pay attention. This is the Book of Omens. It holds all the Thundercats' secrets. And then he says, now here comes the plan. All we have to do is just decipher the book, and when we do, the Thundercats will be history, he said. Then Mumm-ra says, wait, there's more. The Thundercats will be looking for it, but I can assure you they'll never find it, he said. So, you're probably wondering what was Mumm-ra's plan? He told the mutants, listen, all you have to do is hide it, he said. Before the mutants can head off, that's when Mumm-ra gives them the book to say, "Guard this with your lives. Oh, and make sure that Mama goes with you," he said. And so the three of them head off. So meanwhile, back at the Liner with the Thundercats who are camping, we have Tigra, Panther, Lino, and the Snarfs. I don't know where Chitara went off, but by the time she came back, it was confirmed that she found something very interesting. So she told the Thundercats good news. She said, "Look what I found. It's a flute of some kind," although she had no idea what it is. So Chitara didn't hesitate to play the flute, and when she did, both Snurf and his nephew Snurfer went into hypnosis. So after that, Chitara was asking them what's wrong with them, and so they both said nothing. So Tiger says, "Nice try, you two, but we don't have time for jokes." But on the contrary, according to Panther, he says, "I'm afraid this isn't a joke." Also, according to Panthro, and he's not kidding, that flute must have put Snarf and his nephew under hypnosis. So, to demonstrate, Chitara placed the flute again, and it worked. And this time, both Snarf and his nephew are out of the trance. Now, Tiger has his turn to plead a case to say, "You may say it's crazy, but this is a magical flute, part of the treasure of Thundera," he said. So, meanwhile, back at the Pyramid's tomb chamber, so Mama told the mutants there's one other thing. There are places on New Thunder that you've never been to, and it's yet to be explored, he said. So without my protection and with Mom Mutt with you, you wouldn't last 3 minutes, he said. So long story short, after Mumm-ra had granted the ancient spirits of evil to protect the mutants and Mom Mutt, he sent all three of them away. But what the mutants didn't know is that the book that Mumm-ra had gave them is a fake, and he had the real book of Omens himself. So long story short, after Mumm-ra had pleaded a case to say he'll finish out the Thundercats once and for all once he deciphers the real book, Lionel's sword told him that something was wrong. So Lionel did what any good guy would do. He looked through the sword's eye. And when he did, he saw the mutants, Vultureman and Sly, the leader of the mutants, and Mom Mutt, who's Mumm-ra's sidekick, and they're outside the pyramid. But that's not all. Sly, the leader of the mutants, has the Book of Omens. But Lionel had no idea that that book that he had was a fake, and that the real Book of Omens is still with Mumm-ra in the tomb chamber. So, after looking through the sword's eye, that gave Lionel a hunch that somehow Mumm-ra must have given the mutants the book for safekeeping, so now it's up to the Thundercats to get it back. Or so they thought. So, with no time to lose, everybody heads to the Feliner. So back with the mutants, Sly, the leader of the mutants, and Voltman, and along with Mom Mutt, who's Mumm-ra's sidekick, what Sly wanted to know is that after he saw the feliner leave, how did the Thundercats knew that they were there? So Voltman, who got upset about it, told Mom Mutt, who's Mumm-ra's sidekick, to do something about it. But, according to Mutt, what he did is that instead of calling his sidekick for help, as Volterman said, what he did was unbelievable. He spins around and around and around until all three of them are consumed into a magic ball. So that's what happened. So back with the field liner with five of the Thundercats, including Lino, that's when they saw the ball of light from below. So when Snarf sees it, so what they did is that they decided to pursue it. So that's what happened. Oh, about that magic flute that Chitara found, well, for Lino and Snarf, that'll come in handy later. So, back with the field liner continuing to follow the ball of light, it went to the caverns of cold. So, meanwhile, in the caverns of cold, the feline continues to pursue the ball of light. However, according to Tigra, he says if Linksel's not mistaken, we're indeed inside the caverns of cold. Then, of course, suddenly, the feliner started to freeze up. But of course, there's more bad news. Because the feliner was freezing up, they just lost the pursuit of the ball of light. There's only one solution, according to Lionel. They have to walk. So, luckily for the feliner, it found a safe place to land. So back with the mutants and of course Malmut, who's Mumm-ra's psychic, they watched the feliner land someplace safe and intact, of course. So they went to see what's happened. But then, when Slythe, Voltron, and Mama saw the Thundercats coming out of the feliner, that's when Slythe pleaded his case to say it's going to take more than the caverns of cold to stop them. So the three of them head off. So back with the Thundercats, they were following the footprints of the mutants and Marmot, who's Mumm-ra's sidekick. But then Lionel had to stop, and then he says, "Wait a minute, I think this is much too simple." So after Lionel was pleading a case to why the mutants wanted to leave such a trail like that, in Panther's case, to answer Lionel's question, he said, "Well, if I know the mutants, it's definitely a trap," he said. Well, Chitara, although she agrees with Panther, she didn't please her case. She says, "Well, even if it were," and then she asks the question, "What other choice do we have? What other decisions there to make?" Then Chitara continues to plead a case to say since the mutants got the Book of Omens, which unfortunately they were unaware that it was fake, so according to Chitara, what she says in her case is now up to the Thundercats to get it back, and they'll do it whatever's necessary. But then moments later, Linus just heard a voice of Snurf saying, "Come here, quick!" And when the Thundercats did, what they saw was unbelievable. There's a next place that's not far away from the Caverns of Cold. And as for Snurfer, well, he isn't kidding when he told the Thundercats it's the most beautiful canyon he's ever seen. It's the first time he saw it, so did his uncle, and so were the Thundercats, Tiger, Chitara, and Panther. So the five of them went over to get a closer look. So they did. Anyway, on the way there, that's when Lionel, back with him, he sensed that there was something off with that canyon. Well, it's not just any canyon, but Lionel was about to witness it. From his sword, of course. So after Lionel found out what his sword's been telling him, he runs to the canyon, because that's the same canyon that the five Thundercats had went to. But for some reason, the sword's power protected him. And now Lionel knew why. All five of them were turning into kids. Chitara, Panther, Tiger, Snarf, and his nephew. And now he wondered what this canyon is. This is called the Canyon of Youth, and whoever goes into it becomes children. So that's what happened to all five of the Thundercats. So back with Lionel, who was not affected by the Canyon of Youth's effects, but the five of them did, that's when young Chitara was looking at him to ask who he is. "It's me, Lionel," he told Chitara. But Chitara didn't even recognize him, and neither did the rest of them. So they ran off. Now Lionel finds this really weird. The sword had protected him from the Canyon of Youth, but not the five of the Thundercats, and the worst of it all, they don't even recognize him and didn't even remember who he is. Watching it happen was Mumm-ra in the Grimmer's tomb chamber. Although Mumm-ra had pleaded the case to Lionel to say, "You may have come prepared, but I'm afraid your friends are defenseless in the Canyons of Youth," he said. And of course, as Mumra says in his case, there's no way out of there. So he did what he knows best, transformed into his monstrous form with a little help from his ancient spirits of evil, of course. So meanwhile, back at the Canyons of Youth, Lionel tries again to convince all five of the Thundercats about who they are, who he is, and etc. So young Chitara just asked Lionel a question, how could this be possible? She also said, and she's not kidding, that the Thundercats are the best on Thundera. But Lionel told the young Chitara there is no Thundera. Now remember, Thundera had exploded 2 seasons ago. Now, according to Lionel, after he told them that, he also said that the seven of them, including Jogga when he was alive, had escaped from there 2 seasons ago. Then Lionel also explains that ever since 3 episodes ago, they returned right here to New Thundera to get the treasures on Thundera back. So after young Chutar just laughs at it and then dismisses it to convince them otherwise, then so when Lionel says, "Listen to me, we're in serious trouble. And if we don't find a way in soon, we won't survive in the next 24 hours, he said. So Lionel apologized for shouting at them and says, "But I'm going to need your help." "Well, we're going to do our best," young Tiger said. So Tiger was asking what are they planning to do, although it was never explained. So back with the mutants, both Slythe and Vulturemen. They were reading the fake book of Omens. So Sly, the leader of the mutants, wanted to know from Vultureman what it all this means, and Vultureman was more than happy to answer that it's in some kind of code. But then Mumm-ra comes up out of nowhere and says, "Do the code breaking later." "There's work to do," Mumm-ra said, and then Mumm-ra also pleaded a case to the mutants to say all five of the Thundercats are Thundercubs now, well, except for Lino, of course. And better than that, they're defenseless, he said. Meanwhile, on Third Earth, Jackalman and Monkey and other mutants had just told the Lunatics that two of them are alone in the lair and three of them are alone in the tower. The two of them being Bengali and Wily Cat, and the three of them being her brother, Linkso, and Pumira. So after Luna, the leader of the Lunatics, have heard about it, she sent Alluro of the Lunatics to say, "You know your mission. Go to it," she said. So Alluro did what he needed to do and throws the Cyclops ball over the cat's lair. So meanwhile, in the cat's lair's control room, we have Bengali and Wily Kid. So Wily Kid had just told Bengali what was going on. There's a Cyclops ball, the one that Alluro uses it. So what Alluro did is that he did what he knew best. He hypnotized both Bengali and Wily Kid, asking them to give up, surrender, and there's nobody coming, and etc. So long story short, back in the control room, Wily Kid has been hypnotized, but Bengali tells her not to give in, and there's no way they're giving up, and etc. He also told her that Lionel needs them more than ever. "We have to fight back somehow," he said. Back outside, the two of the lunatics that were in the ice runner were Chilla and Red Eye. Back in the control room, when Bengali knows that there's a problem, he had to contact Linkso. But before he did that, there's a bunch of ice that's coming from inside the Castler's control room, and it's caused by Chilla. Luckily for Bengali, when he saw that Wily Kid's under a bunch of ice, he uses the hammer of Thundera to blast Wily Kid. And good news for her, she's free from the ice. But then Bengali saw there was more ice coming in, and then Alluro of the Lunatics just told Bengali, "Not bad, but I'm afraid there's a problem. Your heroics are impressive, but I'm afraid they're no match for us." Outside of the lair, we're in the Ice Runner, Chilla, and Red Eye, so it's now Red Eye's turn to make his move. So long story short, thanks to Red Eye's disc that made some damage in the control room, back with the Lunatics, Luna now sends in Tugmug to do the job. So he heads off. So back with Tugmug that was sent by Luna, the leader, he entered inside the control room where he's face to face with both Bengali and of course Wily Kid. And he does what he knows best, use his gravity gun on them, and so he did. So long story short, after Tugmug had finished the job in the Castler's control room, he came back and along with Chilla and Red Eye, and they told their leader Luna the good news that thanks to them, Castler is now theirs. So there's only one thing left to do is to take care of the Tower of Omens next. So back on New Thundera and the Canyons of Youth, young Chitara placed a magic flute to hypnotize the two Snarfs just like she did when Snarf and his nephew were adults. So they played Simon Says for a while. That was until the five of them seized the Feline coming in. Now don't ask me how it got out of the cavern so cold, but it manages to arrive at the Canyon of Youth, and with Lino inside. But what the five Thunder Cubs didn't even realize that watching them was Mumm-ra, who's Mumm-ra's psychic. So by the time that Lionel comes out of the feliner, and before he can investigate what's going on, Mumm-ra comes out to attack him. But before Lionel could do anything about it, Mumm-ra uses sleeping gas to knock him unconscious. Back with the Thunder Cubs, they rush to see what happened, and luckily for Tigra, he has that magic flute. So he plays it on Mumm-ra. And under Tiger's control, that's when Tiger says, "Hey, get off of him," and Mama did. Now, young Tiger can tell that he was in awe that this flute can control animals, so after he pleaded himself a case, he told Mama, "Now get out of here." Go, shoo! And so Mumm-ra did, and wandered off. So back with the Thundercats, now that Mumm-ra is gone for now, young Chitara went to wake him up. Then young Chitara had pleaded herself to case to say, I don't know why, but I had this distinct feeling that I might have known him. Then finally, Lionel wakes up. So after waking up, Lionel said, what happened? Well, young Panthro was more than happy to answer that. He said that earlier the strange dog was here, and that's when Lionel knew. It's Marmot, Mumm-ra's sidekick. Then Lionel pleaded the case to the Thundercats to say, if I'm not mistaken, if Mumm-ra was here earlier, then that means his sidekick Mumm-ra must not be that far away. We have to get out of here and fast, he suggested. Then suddenly Lionel's sword just told him that there's bad news. So Lionel did what any good guy would do. He looks through the sword's eye, and what he saw was unbelievable. There's trouble back on Third Earth. Both the Cat's Lair and the tower were taken over thanks to the mutants, Jackalman and Monkeyan, and the Lunatics themselves. And then all five of the Thundercats that were there have been captured. And if that's not bad enough, all five of them are now being prisoners in the Sky Tomb that's located on Fire Rock Mountain. So Lionel, after he heard the bad news, he told five of the Thundercats what the sword is, what it does, and what happened back on Third Earth, and that their friends are in serious trouble. Still, the Thundercats are really confused, so now it's up to Lionel to go into Plan B. So what was Lionel's Plan B? Well, he thought of himself if the Sword of Omens can help the Thundercats, maybe it could help him. So Lionel's plan was simply this. He did what any good guy would do. Use the Thundercat signal from his sword to help the Thundercats understand a little better about the Thundercats and everything else. And so he did. And so, back with the five Thundercats, now that they saw the Thundercat signal, they began to understand a little better. And also, even better, they now know what they must do. So, after that, young Cheetar just told Lionel that they'll do what they could. So then after that, Lionel says, pay attention. The five of you will have to go back to Third Earth to rescue our friends, he said. And while you're doing that, I have to stay here to get the Book of Omens back. Because if I don't, everything will be for nothing, and it will mean bad news, and all will be lost, he said. So even though everyone agrees, that's when young Snarf pleads his case to say, we don't know how to fly that thing, even though if we know how to get there. Well, that's true, young Chitara says when it's her turn to plead her case, but that doesn't mean we shouldn't try. Then young Chitara also says that we just may pull it off. Well, young Panther, although he agrees with her, says we just had to figure out on how to do it, that's all. So everybody went into the feliner, except for Lionel, of course. Well, young Panther didn't have any trouble starting it up, but then young Snarf started to have a second thought. He said, wait a minute, I'm not going. And then young Snarfer says, what are you talking about? We have to go. Then Chitara has her turn to convince Snarf to say that there's nothing to be afraid of and nothing to worry about. Even young Panther has his turn to convince him to say, really, we know what we're doing, he said. Then young Snarf has his turn to plead his case to say he's not afraid. Maybe, then again, maybe so, but he suggested that he must stay behind with Lino. So young Tiger has his turn to plead his case to Snarf to say he's not staying with Lino and etc. But young Snarf just says that he could care less about it, but someone has to stay. So Snarf made that decision quite clear. At least that's what he told the others, including his nephew, Snarfer. Before heading off, that's when young Chitar told young Snarf, at least take this loot. It'll be useful later, she suggested. So young Snarf heads off to join up with Lino, but before the Thundercats can do anything and take off, back with Lino, he saw that Mumm-ra was right behind him. So after Mumm-ra had knocked Lionel down for a while on the ground, back with Mumm-ra he shows up in front of Felina to tell the Thundercats, quote, you're too late to save your friends. You will never leave here, and in my opinion, I think you should stay here for the rest of your lives. But is it what Mama said true? Or will the Thundercats manage to escape? And what about Lionel? Will he ever get the Book of Omens back? Well, there's only one way to find out, but right now that's the end of episode 4 and part 4.